Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Arts at EPCC. My name is Dr. Yasmin Flores, and today I have two guests on the show. We dusted him off. We brought him back. Here he is, Mr. Frank Rimbach. Hello, hello.
Hi, how are you? Good
I'm
to see you
doing
again.
good. Good to see you. And with him today is one of his art majors,
Yes.
Steve Santamaria. Hello, how are you?
I am great.
Good.
Awesome.
Welcome to our set, and let me introduce you to George, our plant,
Hi, George.
who is behind you. He's there to take care of you. It's the shoulder for you to cry on if you need to.
Perfect.
Excellent. So now, Steve, I have so many questions for you today. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what drew you to art.
Well, so I'm 19. This is my first year at Rio Grande, or just in EPCC. What drew me to art is actually a really weird story, I guess, but it was just one night at like 5 a.m. I was like, I need to go to the top of the mountain for some reason, and something just drew me up there, I guess, and I climbed to the top of the mountain in like pitch darkness and got on one of the towers, I guess, and up there I just looked out and saw like everything, my whole life basically in El Paso, and I just knew from then on I was like, I need to paint.
Okay.
I need to paint, make art. Yeah.
How about that? So it was sort of just this almost like magical
Yeah.
moment for you.
It really was. It was just like I'm sitting there with my friend, like watching Space Jam 2.
Okay.
And out of nowhere, I'm just like,
Yeah.
just something drew me out. I was like, I need to get out of this house. I need to get off my butt and I need to go.
Okay.
And I climbed up that mountain, and then I came down, and I had so much art. And from then on, if I had a paper and pen in front of me, I was just drawing all the time.
Wow.
And yeah, I took my art. I went to this place called Casa Ortiz, which was
Okay.
in Socorro. And I met a bunch of cool artists there. And they were like, dude, like, yeah, have a show here. Like one of the people that really mentored me or was like a big influence on me was Mario there. And he just was like, use my room. You know, he let me put all my pieces on his wall, and I had a show, like sold my paintings to my family and stuff like that. And just,
Wow.
it was awesome. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it
That
was really
is such a
cool.
different story from,
Yeah.
some folks will come on and say, they got it from their parents, or,
Yeah.
that it's been passed down or something. But so, wow. So you were just inspired by nature.
Yeah, it was
essentially.
just, yeah, it was this really eye-opening thing of like, it almost wasn't even like, it was like I wanted to push the mountain below me. Like I didn't want to climb up it. I wanted to force it beneath my feet and like just prove to myself that I was like something, that
Yeah.
I could like do something. And yeah, just literally ever since then, like I remember even when I would get receipts, like, and I had to sign them, like I couldn't just sign my name. Like I would just like draw crazy pictures all over the receipts.
Oh.
Like, because I literally, if I had a pen touching paper, I just couldn't keep it still. My
Wow.
mind was everywhere, all over the place, and it was crazy. But yeah, and then I sort of like collected myself and was like, I need to study this. And like Frank has been a great teacher, and it's been awesome being
Yeah.
in his class, like actually learning the techniques and
Right.
how to do it, or how to create art in a
Right.
more professional manner, I guess.
That's awesome. So now you're just refining a lot of these skills.
Exactly. Like we've done so many things, just like from drawing hands to just like paper bags. And he gave us an assignment, which was just, draw. He just basically said, draw anything. He was like, draw anything on a big piece of paper. And that it was interesting. Like it had been so long for me. I'd never like filled a page just completely. And I remember one day in art club, I was like, Frank, like, I just need help. Like, I don't know what to do. And he's just like, dude, just fill it in, just do it. Like, do your thing. He's been a great like driving force for me, and it's awesome. Yeah. Cause one thing that was like big, I remember I like didn't want to go to school at all. And then I read this quote from Jackson Pollock, who said like, if you want to break the rules, you first have to know the rules.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's what I was like, okay, like I'll go to school, I'll learn the rules so I can just destroy them.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of relate it in music, we when we study Schoenberg, okay, Arnold Schoenberg is a 20th century composer whose music, when you first listen to it, is just ultra bizarre, right? At first you're kind of like, what in the world is this? But a lot of the students don't understand. If you asked Arnold Schoenberg to write a piece in a Mozartian style, he'll write it like Mozart. Like he knew all the styles, right? But now he was breaking the rules, just as you pointed out. I love it. So now tell me, what is your favorite type of art? You said paint. You've talked a lot about painting.
Yeah.
Is that your favorite thing to do?
I mean, really, it's like any sort of medium is like perfect. You know, like it all has its separate things. But for me, it was just like, I know what I have to do is like paint with oil. Like that is like where I need to get to.
Oh,
you know
wow.
what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, but that you know, in order to even get there, you have to learn the basics like drawing, shading, everything like that. And so, yeah, it is like oil painting, but every time I do it, it's just like, I'm like, what am I doing? You know, like I barely understand it. It's such a confusing medium, but it's also so like, it'll just like make the craziest things like you'll start with a brush and just like a blue and white, and you'll just like make a few lines and it'll just transform into the most like magnificent little shapes and faces and things that you've ever seen. And so it's a really interesting medium, but it's so complex and like complicated, just so hard if you don't have like those underlying skills of like drawing, shading, everything like that. But yeah, even like music too and stuff for me, I'm like, it's all interesting, you know, any form of art, writing, it's all like important. You need to be able to get into that space of like pure creativity where you can just like spill it out of your fingers, you know? Right. But yeah, I mean, oil painting, that's for sure like the most important thing. That's like what I need to do, yeah.
Talk to me about oil painting, and of course, Mr. Rimbach can interject here. What I've heard from many artists that oil painting is difficult. There's a challenge to it. Is it the viscosity of the oil in comparison to watercolor? Is it the texture on the actual canvas? I mean,
it's like so confusing. I almost don't even know what's so hard about it. You know, like creating, because for me, I like, you know, like sharp lines and stuff like that. And with oil, it's like you have to have the most precise hand to get those sharp lines. And then if you just cross over a little bit with like another color, it's just like the whole thing is just ruined and turned into like a nasty brown, you know? Literally, it's
so
crazy.
Do you find yourself, are you the type of artist that, obviously you sound like a perfectionist, and so are you the type of artist that maybe has just like a stack of old canvases lying around?
Every single, I literally since probably like even yesterday I was going through old art for like to send you guys for this interview.
Sure.
And I'm looking through this like big binder I have, and literally I have papers from like, and canvases from like 8th grade, 7th grade that I've just kept, because I'm like, I know one day maybe I'll just come back and I'll like finish it. Even I'll draw like 3 lines on it and I'll have kept it. So,
how funny.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, if I've touched it with paint, I keep it. Like I hold on to it because I know like I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna finish it, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, one big thing, it was like, because at first I was like, I need to get a canvas and I need to finish it, you know? But that was just like, I'll spend 3 months doing nothing, you know? So I was just like, I'll do this, do this, do this. Yeah, I have like 100 canvases just waiting to be painted on.
Oh my
like,
goodness!
Finished, you know?
Wow,
yeah.
That's a lot of storage.
Yeah.
That you
like
need
everywhere,
to house all these canvases. So, Frank, are you similar in when you do oil painting? Do you, first of all, maybe you don't have the same habit of just painting a little bit and then tossing it aside, but could you answer the first question, which is, what is difficult about oil?
I think it's partly the slow drying for many people and the solvents. So you either have to have turpentine or mineral spirits. I do know people that work with a solvent-free studio, and then some people like me, I like Damar varnish or a drying medium, or linseed oil. And so learning to mix all these things and finding the flow of what oil paint can do becomes challenging. So you can cut a hard line for sure, but then you may have to go back to it to straighten it out and let that dry. So you're juggling, it's a little three-dimensional chess. And then you're dealing with color mixtures because they do blend together. If you know you want something to be something, you may have to go back over it with another color. And you're just juggling a lot of different information. Color theory, the solvents, the medium, and then subject matter. Because you can start an oil painting with a drawing, or you can start it with a wash and just knock in some shapes. And then you start, you know, the harder thing about oil painting, or maybe all painting, is they start easy and they get harder as you start to finish them. Like as you're getting close to the finish, there's all this other stuff you have to do. And I think that becomes difficult for some people to get that finishing thing happening. And how do you maintain the energy of something that could take 2-3 months to do, 3 weeks to do? How do you maintain that gesture and go back to it again and again and again? So, plus you need to have ventilation. You should be doing that in the garage or outside, not in a closed bedroom is not a good idea for oil painting, you know.
Maybe you'll find new inspiration, right? All of a sudden, as you're sitting there, you're like, I just had a new idea.
Monkeys made out of chocolate.
Right, yeah, exactly. Let's paint that.
You can forget time if you're using a lot of different solvents, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay, that is very interesting. That already sounds very complicated.
Super.
So, okay, so your goal is to eventually paint with oils. And currently, are you doing watercolor?
We had tried watercolor in an art club meeting, actually. I had like drawn some pen, like I have this like particular style where I just sort of like make lines with a pen, and then I went over it with watercolor. It came into like a flower pot sort of thing. But Frank, he said he really liked the part where I drew and watercolored over it.
Right.
Okay.
How come?
Well, beautiful translucency. You had this veiling that was happening, a glaze. So you had a strong drawing underneath, and then you put this watercolor on top, and it just felt like it was enveloped in space, in water or an environment. And so it was coming through, and it had a lot of depth, which is something that you told me you wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
And so there's ways to do that. You know, we're in a drawing one class. There's ways to do that with shading and other things, but there's also ways to do it with the materials of oil paint or watercolor that kind of naturally lend themselves to certain phenomenon of how they work.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. That's, I mean, I wish, 100 years ago when I was little, I used to love to draw, right? And color pencil, I used to love pastels. Pastels were my favorite.
Yeah, those are nice.
Because my personal frustration was that crowns you always have those little like gaps because it's wax on paper, right? Unless you took a piece of paper and you smeared the crown. I don't know if you've ever done that. Okay, maybe not. You're making a funny face. You're like, no.
I remember it must have been so long ago I did pastels.
Yeah, and so for me it was like, the pastels, they smooth onto the paper much easier, right, than a crown does. Because a crown, you have to take something a little more abrasive, like a piece of paper, to smear out the color, right? And so I just loved the pastels. I was like all over those pastels. And then the charcoal was fun too.
Yeah.
Charcoal was like the shading, right? So you could do these black and white things that, I don't know. I had my fun. I dabbled, right? So oils, and so you've done some watercolor. What else have you played around with?
Mostly, a lot of my earlier work was just like paint pen. I loved working with like this paint pen. And I would do it like literally any flat surface that I saw, I would be like, hey, like, could I borrow that? Like, could I have that? And they'd be like, sure, like my friends and my family. Just like do paint pen all over this thing. And it was a lot like how he was saying earlier, because I had for a long time wanted sort of depth to my paintings. Like, because I'd have like stories within them and like meaning in them, but like visual depth, it was like hard for me because all my drawings were very loose, very abstract, and almost like Basquiat-y,
Okay.
Like they were just kind of flat, not much like dimensions to them, but like they had meaning within them, like intense meaning. I could talk about one of the paintings like this big, I could talk about it for like 30 minutes, I remember.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I would do like paint pen, regular pen, pencil, Anything really just like that's kind of like flat. It doesn't have to be flat, but I guess it's like the more you play with it, I guess you could figure out ways to add depth. But I would just do like simple lines and simple things, and I would let sort of meaning like flower through them, you know?
Okay.
And that's where I sort of got my like, maybe they weren't like craftfully like made, you know? Like they weren't like done by Da Vinci.
Okay.
But to me, it was like the meaning that would come out of them was just like crazy, that I would see these such deep topics come out of just these lines, like simple lines. And I remember I would work a lot with like geometry and numbers too. It was just a really weird time, like when I was really just all into making art all the time. But that's like where you got to be, you know? Like you have to be in that crazy place, you know?
Yeah, and so I have two questions that are popping up out of this. First of all, when you say depth, are you talking about shadows?
Yeah, like shadows and like when you look through a window, you know? Or like this table, like you can tell that it's sort of three-dimensional.
Sure.
You know? It's like that. Like I wanted to make them three-dimensional, not so you just look at it
not
and it's
two-dimensional.
A flat painting. Yeah,
right, of course. Okay, so you were learning about shadows and lighting, right?
But you can get a push-pull, as the artist Hans Hofmann talked about, with a warm color and a cool color. The warm color will recede, the cool color will come forward, or well, vice versa. And so even if you have two yellows, one is hotter and comes forward and one recedes. So I think Stephen is working in that idiom with his abstraction, where the shapes and objects don't have physical form as a cup or a plate or a bird, but they have a sense of spatial depth because of how he's articulating mixing of color together, whether it's colored pencils or the markers that he was using. So that is a type of depth that is created in abstraction, where you get this, you know, the American abstract painters were using that as a way to make you feel this energy. Somebody like, I can't think of his name, not Barnett Newman, but Mark Rothko. So the colors pulsate at you. And they're doing that because of what's behind them and around them. So colors interact with other colors and shapes interact with other shapes. I think that's what Stephen is trying to achieve.
Yeah.
More so than, he can draw a cup, but how do you articulate something that's not a cup, that's a shape, and make it feel like it has this other sensibility, this other feeling within a space, an abstract space.
How interesting. That's, I mean, it's always like deep thoughts, right? Deep thoughts with Frank Rimbach.
Yeah.
Now I want to go, and then my second question is, I want to go back to this mountain. In El Paso, Texas, there was a mountain. Literally?
It was, so I live like right, the Thunderbird, you know, like where the Thunderbird is? I literally live like right below it.
Okay.
And you know, it's like from far away, it looks like not as big, but I mean, you start walking in the desert and it's like, you have to walk like a mile before you even reach like an incline. It's like crazy. And yeah, so like I literally like, I dragged my friend out into the desert. It was like 5:30. I was like, dude, like, let's go to the top of the mountain. He's like, okay, just wait, hold on. Like, he was like, not down, but I was like, no, let's go. Let's just do this.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember we literally like are in the desert and it was like, there's like these little like hills, you know, like when you reach before the mountain and we're like in the middle of one and I just like am way ahead of him and it's pitch black. All I see is his silhouette. And I'm like, you see those red lights like on top of the mountain? And he's like, yeah. I was like, I'm going to those right now. Like, are you coming? And he was like, no. Like, he was pissed. And I was like, well,
oh my gosh.
I was like, well, I'm going. And he's like, I'm like, can you get back home fine? Because he's like, we're like, I don't know, 10 minutes from home, a 10-minute walk from home.
Sure.
And he's like, I believe so.
Okay.
And then I literally like walk in up towards the mountain and I just hear like, Steven. Oh, like as I get further and further, you know?
Wow.
And it was just like this weird night. Like it was just super weird. And I remember like picking up sticks, just like marching up this mountain. Yeah. And then I remember like, so there's just like this deep cavern like that. It's like 30 meters across. And it there's like this cave, and it looks like there's like a snake that's like 80 feet long. Like it was like so weird. It was like, and I like focused my eyes a little bit, and it's a freaking like mountain lion with like its little cubs.
Oh, well, that's dangerous, but yes.
It was super far. So I wasn't like too scared, but I was like, I was just like, what the hell? Like it was
What is that?
And I remember it like looking at me, like dead in the eyes.
Oh no.
But it was far as hell. It was like super far. So I wasn't like freaking out or anything. But I mean, it was just like a wacky thing to see that, you know?
A wacky night.
Yeah, super wacky.
So, and the reason why I bring it back up again is because I find that so many students, they have a hard time picking something. I had an experience very similar to yours. I didn't leave the house for it.
Yeah.
There were no mountain lions.
Yeah.
There were no mountain lions with their cubs. But I had a very similar experience where it's like it smacks you, right?
Yeah.
And so I pursued this, and here I am, doing the oddest things, to include this show, which I love doing this show. I've enjoyed it so much. But the path, of life will take you in a lot of different directions. But my question to you is, so your friends, like the guy that you were with, right, who's looking at you like you're just plumb crazy, like what? How would you talk to your fellow students, right, and say you need to find your calling? How do you think?
It's really just like a thing of like deep introspection, I guess. Like you just have to like, because the more like you look for it is like the more it kind of looks for you, like if you're kind of going after it, like you're trying to figure out who you are and whatnot, it's gonna just like lunge itself at you, it's gonna like show you. And it sometimes when it shows you, it might be like a hard thing, like it might be intense, like you're looking at yourself. I remember another time, like I have all these like paintings on my wall of like old artists, and I was like, oh my God, like I need to be like these guys. I need to be just like them.
Right.
And then like the thought popped into my head of like Van Gogh and how he was just like a messed up dude, and then I was like so excited at first because I was like, I need to be a painter. And then I remembered that, and I was like, oh my God, like that just sounds like hell,
Right.
So I guess it's just like, whatever your calling is, you have to take it in like with a hint of like, it's gonna be pretty sucky sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you're playing like the safe route, doing whatever, like a job or something you find real safe.
Hourly job,
exactly,
yes, exactly.
And whatnot. It's like you're not gonna reach as deep into life as like you can get.
Yes.
Like, because for every time I reached the peak of the mountain, it was like I plummeted down into just the dirt, And so, it's like whatever your calling is, you just need to take it in fully. Like, whatever it is, because for me, at least, it's like, I think everyone knows.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, you'd ask them like, oh, what do you want to be? And they're like, a dental hygienist. And it's like, oh, well, what do you really want to be? And they're like, oh, a music producer.
Right, exactly.
I mean? Yeah, like everyone knows, but it's just like this thing inside where you're like, well, I could be homeless on the street of LA for like 5 years, and it could get really messy. But for me, it's like, that's necessary. Like those deep, horrible points of your life, because for art, I guess, it's not like a thing where like you're building a building where it's like you need materials and you can add like a number value to each beam and pipe and everything like that. It's like you're selling them like this piece of paper.
Right.
Yeah, like this piece of paper or this clip of music. Yeah. And the sort of like value that you put into it is like this like torment you almost have on yourself, or this like struggle that it took you to like get to that point, right, to draw that or make that song, write that book, So it's like really, if you don't know what your calling is, it's just like you gotta listen. And when you know what it is, don't be afraid. Like, just take it in, and it's gonna suck, but it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be beautiful. You know?
Right. You're touching on something that's so amazing. And I had a similar discussion with a music student actually a few weeks ago, who came in and did an interview. It's very similar. And I asked him the same question. You know, how would you try to guide people to finding their calling, right? And so I like everything that you said, and it's true. People are afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
And you have to walk into the dark to see, like, okay, well, what's really there, right? And there are dangers.
Yeah.
And bad things can happen, right?
Like, you can get attacked by a mountain lion.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that, right?
Yeah.
But you continue to, I guess it's, the calling is just so seductive, right? It's just like, you have to do that thing that you that life is wanting you to do.
Yeah. It's like, if you don't do it, like, who is? You know?
That's it.
Yeah. Like, who's gonna do it then?
Yes, I love it.
Who's gonna, like, pull that veil back, I guess?
So when you become famous, you need to come back and do the show.
Okay,
right?
yeah, I will.
Absolutely.
And don't charge me any money, okay? Don't be
will.
like, oh, well, it's going to be $250,000 for 10 minutes, right?
Yeah. But
I think this is what makes Stephen a very chill person, because he has this inner drive, but he has this sense and composure about it. But he knows he wants to go to this place, and it's going to be work.
Right.
There's going to be a struggle, but he's facing this. He's in college. He's going to go to UTEP, I think, next semester.
Yep.
And he's prepared for
awesome.
that battle.
Yeah.
And the battle at night.
Yeah. Like, it's just, it's wild, but you really do have to just take it in all at once. Like, whenever it's happening, you just need to accept it, you know? Whenever it's like gets super messed up, just try and think like, well, I'm going to make a dope song out of this. Or I'm going to make a dope painting out of this. Like,
right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't think I'll ever get famous or anything like that, but that'd be, I mean, recognition is awesome, but yeah, like the fame stuff is, especially today, you know, with social media.
Keep that same thought in your head, because you're absolutely right. The people that become famous off of their art, it's the people that are really just obsessed with the art, right? They're not obsessed with the fame.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Because once you become aware of the fame and you want the fame, you crave the fame, then you lose your individuality, right? You start catering to the audience.
Exactly.
And so I will completely agree with you there.
Yeah.
Don't ever lose that.
I won't. I definitely won't.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me tell you, Stephen Santa Maria, student at RG, art major.
Yes.
Wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming. George enjoyed himself.
Thank you, George.
There he is. Absolutely.
I enjoyed myself.
Yes, and
Steve is a chill dude.
He is. Just
you.
like Mr. Rimbach.
A little chill sometimes.
Yes.
Super chill. He's a chill guy.
Good. Thank you to the two of you. And if you all are interested in the art program at El Paso Community College, please contact Sadella Aguilar. You can also contact Mr. Frank Rimbach, and we'll have those two emails on the bottom of the screen. Again, thank you so much to my guests today, and thank you everybody for joining us. Bye for now.